Hi everybody, welcome to today's NBS webinar, Improved Model and Spec Integration. So webinar is going to last 50-55 minutes. Everyone's microphone's muted, but please ask as many questions as you like, put some comments in, always appreciated. And it's on the subject of modeling information about buildings and what is BIM. I think it's worthwhile just before we start, just to reflect back on the last 10 years or so on BIM and how NBS has sort of tried to play their part. So we've always had people on the B5 55 BSI committee that sort of set the standards for BIM in the UK. So going back to Richard Waterhouse, our previous chief exec, chairing that as the 1192 standards were developed up until now. Paul Swaddle there that's still working on the sort of classification standards and things. We've had members on the CEN 442 European Standards Committee defining BIM across Europe, including myself. And more recently on the Government and Industry Interoperability Group, where Sarah Delaney, Chris Vickers were both on leading the classification work stream there as well. And in terms of deliverables, I think sort of Uniclass is probably the biggest sort of free for industry deliverable that NBS has led and been involved with. And we initially did that as part of the UK BIM task groups, the level 2 BIM program. And then more recently as part of the GIG work. We did 2 phases of work looking at sort of mapping classifications to structures such as IFC. So that sort of sets a little bit of background in terms of NBS's involvement in sort of BIM over the last 10 years or so in the UK and beyond. Today's webinar is going to be in 2 parts. The first part is going to be myself, Stephen Hamill, Innovation Director at NBS, and I'm going to look at modelling information just purely from a specification side. And then I'm going to pass on the second part of the presentation, and my colleague Chris Vickers on the webinar, also senior technical solutions consultant, who's going to look at how you can link the information that NBS model in tools like NBS Chorus, NBS Source to your sort of 3D modeling environment. He's going to mainly use sort of Revit to demonstrate that, but also a little bit of Solibri. So first part of the webinar, NBS information. And we're going to look at sort of three things here. First one, modeling data. We're not going to look at 3D models, but you can still model data without it being 3D. And we'll have a little focus on modeling construction products, sort of technical characteristics, classifications, etc., and how we try and make life easier for specifiers. So if we jump straight in, like, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the output? And I guess the fundamental output is a coordinated set of drawings, schedules, and specification. So it's all saying the same thing. You say it once in the right place, and you can maybe publish it in many places by using modeling tools. So that's what we want to achieve. Maybe as a stretch goal, we want to have like well-structured information in the formats like COBE and IFC, which Chris will also touch on. But that fundamental goal is to create a coordinated set of project information. You've got a well-structured specification on the left-hand side, and you've got information exported from the 3D model here, a little annotated 3D view and coordinated schedule there on the right-hand side. And the primary thing at NBS that we use to structure our information sets is the Uniclass classification system. And that's got a number of tables. Search Uniclass on Google if you're not aware of what it is. You can learn all about it. But there's a number of classification tables looking at different types of objects that define our built environment. So things like spaces, you could have classrooms, dining rooms, tools and equipment, you could have scaffolding, screwdrivers, etc. But in terms of the NBS products, it's largely around elements, systems, products, and specifying those. So each of these tables sits independently, like you could use it to classify products in a warehouse that have no relation other than the sort of classification groupings. But by using modeling tools, you can link information from the different classification tables. So if you are designing a dining building, you've got this sort of entity code there, that's made up of elements. So you've got things like walls, floors, ceilings, you've got functions, sort of heating, cooling. And then those elements are made up of systems. So by doing your design, you're creating those relationships between the different types of things, the different objects. So that external wall could be made up of rain screen cladding, masonry, and a lining, maybe paint system on the inside. And then each of those systems, you see the SS for the system codes, are made up of products. So it could be 9 or 10 products in a masonry wall, but just to highlight 4 or 5 things like blocks, mortar, wall ties, cavity trays, insulation, etc. And NBS allows you to model and specify from external wall all the way down to the insulation that's in that wall. So let's just have a little look at that. This is our new early stage specification library that's going to be released later in the year. You might have seen the press release. We're doing this also with BCIS and offering sort of cost and carbon guidance at an early stage. But that will allow specifiers to specify the level of the element. And I've got the Uniclass content on the screen here. We do have a cores version of this as well, but because we're talking about modeling information, today is all going to be around Uniclass. But it allows you to specify things at the level of the elements or the function at a very early stage of the project, maybe concept design where you can capture the client requirements. And then you can sort of nail down the performance requirements that you need for that entire element. So I need the following acoustic or structural or a fire performance across that entire element that makes the building work. And throughout this sort of modeling exercise, there's the sort of what you want in terms of performance, which then gets replaced by what the prescribed solution is to meet that performance. So I'd like the following structural, fire, or acoustic performance. And then you can specify how that will be achieved by going to the next level of objects. So you're going from wall, which is an element, down to a combination of 3 systems that meet the requirements that you're sort of setting out to achieve. So you can start that specification concept design stage, and then as it's developing through the technical design, sort of slowly build that up, modeling the links. These are hyperlinks. And you come in, and you've got a software sequence here, and you go from the external wall element. And once you've made that decision, ultimately jump from the wall element to the systems that make up that wall. So you can see there the masonry wall leaf system is used as part of the external wall. And just like we saw at element level, you can specify the performance, might be going into a contractor design package, or you can specify the products that achieve that performance. So you see there lots of clauses that you can invoke for performance, and then a big checklist of all of the different potential products that make up that system and give you the performance that you want. So is it concrete blocks? Is it clear bricks? Is it manufactured stone blocks? And against each one of those, depending on what sort of building you're building, you can make that decision and add it to the specification. So this masonry wall leaf system is going to be made up of concrete blocks. You can remove the items that aren't relevant. So you don't have special shapes or different mortar for below DPC. You can remove those items. And where you have got a decision to make, you make the decision. So we've now got aggregate concrete blocks. We've got wall ties. We've got mineral slab insulation, mineral fiber slab insulation. And now we've got a relationship between the element to the system to ultimately the products that make it up. And we sort of move from that concept design all the way through to sort of technical design and specification now, where you specify something like a concrete block. Now, the next software sequence here that we jump to just shows how our technical authors research and define that sort of template structure for a generic product. So they've researched what's the standard, is BSEN 7713. And then for each of those technical characteristics, they're defined with suggested values. So configuration group 1 as defined in that standard, category. Either Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, again using the technical information, the enumerated values from that standard. And then for numeric values, typical numeric values with the correct units that are in. So you could specify the technical characteristics for that particular concrete block. In addition to NBS, we also model manufacturer information. So you saw there was maybe 100 different types of concrete blocks from 6 or 7 manufacturers. And we sort of mirror that data structure with what's available in the market. So this is the data entry platform that our manufacturers use. It's got a few generic properties in, but for the specific properties, those technical characteristics, the values the manufacturer picked from are the same that the specifiers picked from. So we've created that sort of common set of rules, that single marketplace. And if the manufacturer picks from the values that the technical authors at NBS have authored, you get that little green tick where the manufacturer, they can write what they want in, but if they write from the values that the technical authors have sort of defined, so we jump across to NBS source here, it allows things like comparison and filtering. So if I search for that same category now on source, aggregate concrete block, you'll see how we've modeled that information. Again, no 3D modeling inside here. It's just strong information modeling. So what we got there, 80, 90 concrete blocks. I go down to the specific properties, the specification properties, and I see that 43 out of those 90 products are Group 1 configuration of that British standard. I drop down again there, I can go to the category of compressive strength to Group 1, and it's dropped down to 13 products that meet those requirements. So we just have a look at those 3 products that are at the top of the page there. You'll see that the structure of that modeled information is sort of very high quality now. And that would have been the same if it was Thomas Armstrong or Lignosite or Oscar Acoustics or whoever did that concrete block. And then ultimately, we want to create that specification that's going to get published to the project team. There's 2 fundamental ways of specifying those products. The first one is you're picking the product that does the job. You've done your research. You know that the Insulite, whatever block from Thomas Armstrong does the job. You click add to spec and it drops into the specification. The second way of specifying is leaving the final specification to the contractors team. So manufacturer here, you could say contractor's choice, you could say submit proposals. And then you specify those minimum requirements for that particular block. So you could say it must have a BVA certificate, it must be grade A5 performance, whatever thermal conductivity, whatever size. So throughout the specification, depending on the project, depending on the requirements, there will be a mix typically of proprietary specification and generic specification to a quality level. Okay, so that's a sort of brief introduction for myself, just sort of quick, sort of 10 minutes. What we're going to show now, I'm going to pass on to my colleague Chris, is how the information that we model in NBS, the sort of right-hand side there, you see specification there for a wash basin, is now linked and coordinated with the information that ends up in drawings and schedules that's sort of modeled in 3D. So you've got that link there between the wall and the wash basin, and the annotation there for the wall hung wash basin on the left-hand side. What tools have NBS got to help you achieve this sort of coordinated set of information, which gets published at the end of the day and the building gets tendered and built from? So passing on now to my colleague Chris Vickers, Senior Technical Solutions Consultant at NBS, to show how all of that information is coordinated. Over to you, Chris.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Great introduction there. On the purpose of this sort of demo here, I just want to sort of split it into sort of 3 distinct sections. First of all, we'll look at linking objects back to the specification. And depending on what type of object you're trying to match to the spec, slightly different processes, but the principles are very much the same. We'll then look at using information that's pushed into these objects and how we can extract that into things like schedules or annotated tags that Stephen showed on his screen there. And then finally, we'll touch upon export and IFC, models from Revit, taking with it that embedded data that we've pushed into that, and it'll be quite high level in Solibri. So let's get started with linking objects to start with. Now, first of all, I'm going to just switch to this very simplistic heat and schedule, and you see here in my 3D model, this is it's actually an accessible WC, and it's you can see it's bound by block work there. It's got a door in there in the ceiling, so it's a mix of different product types. But currently in here, we haven't got a radiator, so we've got a plan view elevation, and then we've got a setup schedule there that's got the NBS shared parameters set up ready to go. Now, first of all, I'm just going to open this view, and I'm actually going to go to my mechanical and services specification. So if I just jump back into the spec, you can see there for this particular model here, we've got an architectural specification, which is currently linked and associated to the model. And we've also got a building services specification here as well. So multidiscipline specifications. And I'm actually in here as a writer. So you can get a writer license or a designer license. So I'm in here as a writer. The very first step is just to link these specs with your model. And I've done this already, but essentially you hit the 3 little dots and you hit associate with model. And that's the very first step. But because I'm looking for a radiator, I'm actually going to just look in the spec here just to see what's been specified already. Now I'm using codes here that are aligned to the suffixes in the specification. So low temperature hot water 310, and 3 signifies a product. If it was a system, that would start with a 1. So I'm going to search for that, and you can see it's actually brought up here the radiator clause. So I'm actually just going to jump into this. I'm just going to see what's in here, what has been sort of nominated as a product. You see we've got a Autodesk radiator as the manufacturer, and it's actually the FIA owner horizontal type 11 radiator. So I'm now going to jump across into NBS source, and I'm actually going to search for exactly the same. So FI owner, got my caps wrong there. FI owner, I can spell it correctly. There we are. So it's brought that. So I've been very specific in what I've searched there, and it's brought that first result there is the FI owner horizontal radiator. And it's just a case I'm just going to drag this across into my model like so. What it might do is it might update it. Yeah, so it's been authored in Revit 2020, and the plugin I'm using is Revit 2022. So it's just doing a quick automatic update of that object. And once this is done, we can obviously place it in the position as required. And there we go. The object's just downloaded. You can see by default it's brought in a particular size object. You see there it's a floor-mounted radiator. If I then just click on the object itself and go into my properties, by default it's brought in a type 33, but we actually want to change this to match the spec, and we want a type 11 in there. So I'm just going to change that like so. I'm not going to bother with changing the sizes. I could do if I wanted to, but what I want to show you initially is once I've dropped this into the spec, and I'll go into my object properties. This is a hosted object. So on the NBS source website, we host manufacturers' objects, or there's objects on there that have been created and authored by NBS to the BIM object standard. I want to use this one just because it's a hosted one. It doesn't go to the same level of data and properties that we import or add or associate to these objects. So you can see here it's pretty much blank, and I wanted to show that as blank because the next step in the process is then for me to then link this back to the specification. So by selecting the object, I'm going to go back into the spec. I'm going to go back into the contents, and I'm going to do low temperature hot water again, and 310. And this time, so this is the relevant clause. I'm going to hit the 3 little dots, and then I'm going to associate this now with the model. Associate now. and that'll give me a little prompt there to say that now this object is being successful. Now, if I go into the properties now, what we should see is we should see new properties that we've pushed in from NBS Chorus into the object. So now we've got full classification to uniclass. We've got the suffix from the specification as well. And then we've got 3 read-only sort of GUID properties here. And that's the clause of the actual spec. So that's where I've just made the association there. We've got the actual specification ID. And we've also got the project ID as well. So all that information is now embedded into this object. And then you can see we've now got these additional properties. So we've got NBS Chorus category, which is the clause number and title. We've got a manufacturer product URL. So this is a link that will take you back to NBS source to that particular product page. And then we've got the product reference, which is the name of the product, the manufacturer's name, the chorus description. So that's the actual description within the specification itself. And we've got the chorus URL link in there as well. And you can see I've had to do no sort of manual work to push that information into that particular object. So they're the new properties. So we've actually expanded on the number of properties we've pushed in there, and this is based on user feedback. So they're wanting to use more information in the drawings. So that's what we've gone ahead and developed. And then you can also see that as I sort of zoom out there, it's also automatically generated this schedule. So uniclass information, the chorus ID, the type name, the count. There's a bit of manual work there to specify the actual size, so to make sure the output of the radiator heats the room correctly. But then we've obviously got the supplier information that sits alongside that. And this is all being pulled from those properties that we've just embedded there into that object. So for a component object, it's pretty easy. Click the object and associate it via the 3 little dots. Now, if we move to a what we refer to as a layered object, or in this instance here, this is actually a system. So it's a system object, not a product object. So you've got obviously a system that's then built up of the different layers. And this example here, it's a blockwork wall, and then it's got adhesive and a tile finish internally. But to associate this to the spec, it works in exactly the same way. So I'm actually going to click on the wall, and you can see I've got some tags associated here already, and they're all blank. And they're blank purely because I haven't associated this wall type yet back to the specification. So I'm going to go back into NBS Chorus, and I'm going to this time navigate to the architectural specification. And this time I'm going to use the suffix EWS 102. And the 1, as I mentioned earlier, signifies that this is a system. And you can see there, it's brought up that little system code there. And exactly the same way as previously, click the 3 little dots, associate to model. Now, this time here, though, I have a few options. I can associate at the overall object type level. In this case, it's the wall as a system. And it also gives me the ability then to predefine the materials there as well. So I can actually drill down to that next level in classification. So from systems to the individual products that sort of build up that system. So first of all, I'm just going to select a basic wall, and I'm going to associate that to the specification. And you can see straight away there, it's automatically embedded that information, and it's brought that through the annotation tags. So the clause code and title, the suffix reference, and then the description within the specification. Obviously, these tags can be manipulated and changed in however you want these to appear. This is just an example of how we can customize these to suit. And then to do the individual materials, you then simply work through this. So I'm going to do IWS 307. Now I'm going to do the ceramic tile finish on this layer. So I'm going to click associate with model, and I'm going to click the ceramic tile layer there, and I'm going to associate that now. And you can see there, again, it's bringing through that information. I'm going to do the same for the adhesive. Associate now. And then finally, I'm going to do the same for the block work. So for the block work, we've got EWS 304. You see there we've got internal aggregate concrete blocks, click associate with model, and the last one in the list there is the block work, and associate that. So a slightly different process for layered or built up objects, and it'll be the same in the scenario for a ceiling or for a floor, but really easy. Same principles. The three little dots, associate that with the specification, and you can see there in terms of annotations, it's brought through all that information. So I haven't again done any manual manipulation. It's pulled all of the information live from Chorus within Revit itself. So naturally, as the project progresses, that there might be instances where the information in the spec has been updated. It could be things like descriptions, classification, probably not, but descriptions most definitely could be. The description might change according to location, so above DPC, below DPC. If this does happen, and we'll do a demonstration of how to fix those changes, because they don't automatically then pull through into your annotations. There is a bit of a manual QA check to do with here. So what I'm going to search for now, so I don't necessarily, I know I've been shown suffixes here, but it does also pick up keywords. So it can pick up keywords in the classification title. So for the masonry wall leaf system, you can see there I've started to type masonry, and you can see there it's brought up two clauses there, the cement and the system itself. So within the system, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change the description. So I'm just going to put in here webinar text for info, and just an example, and I'm going to save this. Now, as soon as I save it, within Chorus itself, we have a model. We had a model tab, and just to talk you through what this is shown here, we've got unassociated. So these are all the objects in the model that aren't linked back to the specification. We've also obviously got the flip side of that, which is everything that is associated. And we've also got a few warnings in here as well. And you can see we've got a few of the parameters don't match, and we've also got an error here for the masonry wall leaf system. Now it doesn't tell me it's because I've changed the description. It's just telling me there is an error. So I can come through go through these lists here, and I can just fix. I can do a fix all if I want to, or I can work through these one by one. And you can see as I work through them, it's then automatically updated the annotation tag coming through there. So webinar text for info is then displayed. So it's a bit of a sort of QA exercise to go through, and it's quite nice just to get into the habit of just going through and validating that the two are in parallel, because you might be working in Revit as a designer license where you can't make changes in the specification. So sometimes the two will become sort of untangled. So in terms of annotations, that's really how they work. So pulling information in, they then can be manipulated and automatically updated. So that sort of time-saving element is really nice when we look at annotations. The final thing that we wanted to look at is the use of IFC and the export of IFC from Revit. So going through annotations, as I've sort of demonstrated there, is very much in terms of outputs what we've been doing for many years, not only on a PC, but going back to the early days of specification, where references to the spec and clauses would be handwritten on drawings as well. So typically, you would as an output, you would PDF things like this example here. These are room elevations. And you see everything sort of annotated up nicely there, all the different components, etc. But we've got to think about the bigger picture, and not just sharing information with the sort of design team and contractor and specialist subcontractors, but also maybe thinking about things like facilities management and sort of in-use side of it. And that's where really IFC comes into play. It's supported within the ISO 19650 documents as well. So just to talk you through some of the things we've been looking at to help the export of IFC. Stephen's already mentioned the gig work that we've already undertaken. So that's looking at the relationships between Uniclass classification and IFC classification. So that's very much object type in the IFC world. But just to show you an example of IFC exports, again, just using this very simple 3D model. First of all, I would have to be in a 3D view. And then if we look at the export settings in IFC, we'll talk you through some of the things that we've been looking at. So we've set up our own step file. And when I say step file, it's the current sort of setup that we've pulled together here. Now, I've named it NBS Chorus. If I just click modify setup, I'll just talk you through some of the sort of key areas here that we've looked at. And it's mainly to do with, first of all, classification settings. So how we can export uniclass from Revit and take that into an IFC file. And you see we begin to populate a lot of the sort of uniclass metadata. So the name of the specification tables, who's the publisher, and edition. Now for edition, it's we've indicated here the latest versions of those tables. So elements is 1.13, products is 1.31, for example. The edition date, again, is aligned to the last time the tables were updated. And because they're updated every quarter, we've just picked that time of when we've embedded this information. We've got document location, and then we've got classification field name. Now this links directly to IFC classification in the IFC schema world. And these are the two properties that we're actually pushing into our objects. So these are getting embedded, and these are displaying the clause code and the clause title. And it's just telling Revit here that when we go into the IFC world, they're the properties that we want to pull with it, to pull that classification information from the objects. Now you can see we've got two in here. One is type level, so that's very much at component level, but there will be instances as well where you need classification at instance level. So instance level will be things like spaces, so the information needs to be at a different level. So we've used, in this case here, as a workaround, the material property. That's purely because it is an instance property. We've also looked at a mapping file as well. So it's a case of you just browse to the actual text file, and this is what it looks like. And this is a way of just being able to group the information. Now, the way we've grouped it, as you see there, by property set, we've got an NBS general, and we've got all the properties, the type of property type, so text, URL, and then we've got the NBS specification. Now, the NBS specification are all the new properties that I've just showed there on screen that's getting pushed into objects at point of associating that back to the specification. And you can see that we've also got Chorus information in here. And these have all been groups to the National BIM standard, US BIM standard 4.2, which is the Chorus Annex A mapping document. And we've grouped these according to that. One thing I didn't show, if I just cancel this, and if I just click on the wall, I'm just going to quickly show you the wall properties. Because if NBS do author content, we always embed by default IFC information. We've got general information such as the name of the object, who the author is, the version of the object. You can see the embedded properties from the specification. But then we've also got Chorus information in here under other. And these are all any object by NBS are authored to the NBS BIM object standard. So that's why we've got a mix of hosted, which might only be the geometry and the sort of functional properties in there. But if they authored, we in addition include all the data side of it in there as well. So once we export that to IFC, it will take all that information via the mapping file and via the classification and metadata into a software like Solibri. Now, you can see on screen here, this is the very simple model exported. And if I just sort of switch off the walls, for example, you can see in here, it's brought with it all the different components in there as well. But, so just to talk you through a few things in Solibri, you can see we've got the model tree on the left-hand side here. So we've got the project name. You can see we've got zone information coming through here. And then we've got the space is come through here as well. I'll just click on the classification tab here. You can see that it's pulling through uniclass, and it's pulling through the reference, so the code and the title with it. And as you go through the tree, we've got the site information. So there's the entity table reference there. And then obviously as we work through into the ground floor, which is a level, and then you've got all the components that are on that floor. Really, really nice to see that classification uniclass come through as expected. And then as you click on the components themselves, you see that at product level, PR codes that's coming through. And then we've also got some IFC standard property sets. So that's the manufacturer occurrence and the manufacturer type information. And then it's also brought through all the Corby property sets as well. You can see we've got assets, we've got the Corby information, the warranty information. We've also got the general information in here. And we've also got the NBS specification tab as well. So these are all the properties that have been pushed into the objects on the fly at point of association to the spec. And you can see it's brought everything with it. And it's also brought with it clickable URL links as well. So you can see if I just click on the link there, it's brought me straight to that .tech page, which is really nice. And it's the same for any other object in here. I can click on the toilet. If I just get rid of my space, if I just come down into my components, I'll use. Let's have a look. Let's do. Yeah, let's do the wall. We'll do the wall there. Again, all the classification information is coming through. So if I just turn off the space in my model, and then I just click on the individual products there that make up the doc pack, you can see WC pan. Again, it works in the same way. All that information is being pulled through, and I click on the link there, and it will take me to this product page, like so. And once you're on this point, it's probably worth noting that it's using the permalinks on NBS Source, so it is that point of time that the object was downloaded, or the point in time that was associated to the specification. So in 3 years down the line, this product might have been updated. So you'll get a prompt there if you do hit this landing page and it's out of date. You get a prompt to say, no, this product has been superseded. Do you want to then view the historic information? But you can see at this point here, you've got contact information for the manufacturer, and you've got again all the specification data that sits alongside that, all your objects, etc. So from a sort of facilities management perspective, being able to then use the IFC file to look up manufacturers' products, where you might be able to find contact information, which sort of sits in sort of parallel with Corby data. So that whole idea of being sort of accessible. So using repurposing the data from Revit, but just using it in a different ways. A really nice way of being able to think about the value of data. Spend a lot of time pulling data together. It's just how then we use that to suit what it is we're trying to do. Once obviously all that data is in there, you can see on the tabs it's not clearly indicate there. It's come through well structured. We can begin to think about how we could potentially use that information to pull off run reports. Again, just trying to think about some of the things that we might do, and this is all sort of quite high level and simple examples here, but we've got a few sort of set up here already. So if I want to see which suppliers, so in this accessible WC room of all these products, which one of these have and necessarily perhaps potentially contractor's choice, but have a sort of nominated manufacturer against them, and we can run sort of takeoff reports here. So you can see here, I've just run a report there, and you can see that the doors got a manufacturer portion to it. So it's the ceiling, the wall here has, and there the toilet has. And again, these are all clickable links that'll take me off to the relevant pages, like I illustrated before. So the wash basin again is from the Orion book. So a really nice way of being able to use the information in the IFC model. Again, what's quite nice as well, I showed you in Revit there, we can run a report and see how, see which objects in the Revit model and actually associate it to a specification. So we can do something very similar within Solibri as well. So again, we can do a takeoff here, and it'll just show me everything that's not associated to a spec. In this instance here, it's actually bringing in a few others. It's bringing in the space. But if I were to do this side by side with the Revit model, and if I go back to my model here, my model tab, we should see some commonality here. So it's pulling in the same information. It's telling me there's a cover in there, there's a slab there, which represents the two floors. So again, maybe there's a contractor who isn't using Revit. They could run these reports within Solibri and pull the same information, which is really nice to see that the two do mirror one another there. So that was quite high level in terms of Solibri, but just to give you a sort of insight of taking the information from one proprietary software like Revit into something like IFC, and then being able to sort of navigate through the information that's brought with it. Hopefully that was insightful and useful. I'll hand back over to you now, Stephen. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. That was a great live demo of not just Revit, but also seeing it in Solibri as well. So just to sort of reinforce just one or two of the things that Chris presented there, I think the first one is the additional properties that we're now sharing between Chorus and the modeling environment. And that came from user requests, like the ability to put spec notes on drawings, the ability to do things like drop the manufacturer name that's been specified, into things like schedules or even annotations as well. And I think the big thing at the moment, if you do get something like a 3D IFC model, how much can you trust the information that's in there? How many times have people maybe just used a 3D object with a manufacturer name in that doesn't match the spec? And by getting that coordinated first in tools like Revit before going to IFC and having those URLs for the manufacturers, hopefully it just really improves the quality of information in something like an IFC export at the end. And the last thing just to mention on, I was talking to Chris before the webinar, like prior to joining NBS, Chris was an architectural technician at Faulkner Browns. And we're saying, like, if you're working on a big project, what are the roles on that project? And we're saying maybe one or two people will work on the specification, but you might have 4, 5, 6 working on the drawings and the schedules. And what we've got at NBS now is the ability to have different license types. So you imagine 6 or 7 people working on the same project. 1 or 2 of them would typically maybe work on the specification, but we've now got something called designer licenses, which is like low-cost licenses to NBS for those that are working in tools like Revit on the design. And they've been pretty successful this year. There's a lot of practices now using that, so you can get NBS use across the practice, but at a sort of an affordable price for everyone to have a subscription. So a few of the brand logos on the right-hand side of architects, engineers that are currently not just using the specifier licenses, but also the designer licenses. And if you do both jobs, like sometimes you write the specification, sometimes you're doing things like annotations and drawing generation, you can just toggle the license you use. So if your practice subscribes to designer licenses as well, if you're just in sort of Revit mode, toggle from writer to designer, and you'd just be taking one of those low-cost licenses out. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. Please give us feedback. What are the topics we'd like to see in future? What do you think of today's webinar? But yeah, pop a message in the chat if you'd like to know more. Please visit thembs.com and learn more about how NBS can help you with coordinated project information. Any questions, drop us an email. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.